Recording. Perfect. All right, you guys, we're going to wait just a second here. Hey, Mindy, could you do me a favor? I'm going
my friend.
I'm going to make you a co-host.
I'm honored.
And you're going to have to behave yourself. But the reason why I'm doing that is so I think as a co-host, I think you'll be able to admit people that are in the waiting room.
Okay, I see that. Yep.
So could you admit folks as they come in?
You got it, pal.
Right on. Thank you. And actually, we don't have a moderator here today either. So Mindy, would you like to moderate for me?
What does that entail, dude?
Oh, money and beer.
Oh, sure. Done.
Actually, all that entails is I'm going to rename you to put moderator in front of your name. And then if you could just sort of keep an eye on the chat.
Sure.
And I know we'll probably have a ton of questions.
Okay.
And one thing that I am utterly incapable of is keeping a really close eye on the chat while I'm keeping my train of thought as what I'm doing. I mean, I can sort of glance over, but then as I read the question and think about the answer, then it just doesn't work for me. So so for any questions that you guys have, certainly pop them into the chat. Mindy's going to monitor the chat. This is totally, she had no idea I was going to ask her to do this, but Mindy can do anything. I'm going to have her monitor the chat. And if it's a burning question that really applies directly to what we're doing at that moment, Mindy, I'm going to ask you to just unmute yourself. And no matter if I'm mid-sentence, doesn't matter, just go, Eric, got a question in the chat, right? And then you could throw the question at me. If I can't answer it at that point, this is being recorded. And so we'll have the chat archived and I will get back to you guys individually because you're identified in the chat. So now, as we know, our time together today is pretty limited. The big goal really is to make you aware of the potential and sort of what can be done, as opposed to you walking away knowing exactly how to do every single step, right? You'll get some of the steps, but I'm gonna go pretty fast in some parts. If you're a seasoned activity user in Seesaw, you're probably gonna follow along pretty well. If you haven't used activities very much, don't get caught up in the weeds, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Don't stop thinking because you can't remember how to do what I just showed you. Just sit back, relax, and just think, oh, when I create an activity, I can provide the students the link to that activity now, which I didn't used to be able to do. The resources are there for you to figure out how to do it later. The bigger picture now really is to realize that it can be done, and where can you go down the road to figure out how to reproduce that result, okay? The bit.ly that's right there, the Seesaw BSD, if you go there, you can get a copy of this slide deck. I've got about 10 slides or so that we're gonna go through really quick, and then we're gonna actually drop into, Seesaw and spend the bulk of our time together in Seesaw. And I don't have anything backed up after 2:30, so I'm willing to stick around for quite a while after 2:30 if anybody wants to do that. All right.
I have a question right off the bat that looks important before we can move on.
Sure.
A new class is Chris's new class has not been assigned yet. Should they open new archive class to get into or start a new class?
That would be a question for Steve Simpson. So I would email Steve Simpson directly and ask him about that. And you can tell him that Eric told you to, because officially you're supposed to go through the help desk, but if you told him Eric told you, you won't get in trouble, I will. So, but seriously, Steve knows everything about that. He's the one that does all the rostering with IT. So the right answer probably is just wait, because they're just taking a while to roster classes, but I would shoot an email to Steve Simpson and just say, hey, I think by trying to do it yourself, you might mess up, because then when the system comes in and tries to do it, you've already got something going. So I would just shoot Steve an email and ask him about that. All right, that was from Chris Amorose. I think Chris Amorose might be one of the only folks on the Zoom that's been around maybe as long or longer than me. I see Karen Lochting though. Karen was a mentor of mine. I'm going to embarrass her. She was a mentor of mine at Barnes when I started there in 1991. I remember walking into her classroom a couple of weeks before school started. First year teacher, right? I was so clueless. And her room was just so beautiful. Yours and Kathy Robertson's rooms, they're right next to each other, and they were so beautiful, homemade curtains and the whole thing. And my room was just a dust hole that had been used for storage. And I remember just feeling so stressed walking into Karen's room and just seeing how magnificent it was. But those first year teacher pieces, I think I can do it now, but I don't know. I bet you my room still doesn't look like yours though, Karen. All right.
I actually don't have a room totally assigned to me yet, so I bet it does.
Well, I'll bet you within 3 days it'll be back the way it always was. All right. A lot of familiar faces, you guys. I'm so glad to see a lot of familiar faces. All right. So let's see if I can do this without messing up. Now we know that there's going to be some issues with technology today, so I'll just put that right up front, right? So we're here today for engaging students and improving workflow using Seesaw Activities. I'm going to find out in just a minute where you are with that. So I'm the Future Bus Assistant Manager. I failed my commercial driver's license the first time. That's a story I'll tell you over a cocktail sometime. But and this is a picture of me over the pandemic. I've been working hard on a lot of do-it-yourself projects. And I actually built myself a full-on military-style flamethrower that I've been having a lot of fun with out on 50 acres in Eastern Washington with a friend of mine that I met in middle school who's literally a retired rocket scientist and has been a mentor of mine for many years. And so we're very safe. What you don't see, there's about 10 guys with commercial-grade fire extinguishers standing around me, getting ready in case something went wrong. But that was a fun project. All right. So you've probably seen this slide before if you've been taking the PD on the patio and some of the classes today and earlier. When I look at these buckets, I'm not even sure what we're calling these, but when I look at these buckets for comprehensive distance learning, I like to look at the strategy I'm using or the tool I'm using and think to myself, how well does it fit into any of these buckets, right? And Seesaw is one of the few tools that really does hit every single one of these buckets for distance learning. I won't go into detail about how it does address each of those. I would assume that many of us on the call are familiar with Seesaw, at least in its base sense. And it help. You can connect with kids and families, certainly engaging. You can teach with it. You can check for understanding, and you can certainly respond, right? So, and respond to students' needs in terms of differentiating and things. And so, Seesaw really does hit them all. I like this this statement here. I like to focus on that one word, right? Humanized, and know that in these difficult times, and I've learned a lot from my colleagues about this over the last several months, but in these difficult times, we need to make sure that we're focusing on our students' social and emotional needs as opposed to just knowing that there's a specific amount of content that we have to get through. And I think it's, as we know, I'm preaching to the choir here, you guys, I know, but even more importantly than when we have our kids in person, we need to make sure that their basic needs are being met. And many of us are doing that in a lot of different ways. And Seesaw can actually help us humanize that, I think, because they can hear your voice, you can hear their voice, you can respond to them with your voice, with the voice comments, all those kinds of things. So Seesaw, I think, is a powerful way for us to address this statement. Here's another slide that I think many of you have already seen. I just want to focus on one little piece on this slide, and that is the third bullet point under culture, right? Use of collectivist learning principles. When we think about collectivist learning principles, simply, that is just saying allowing kids to work in collaborative environments, right? Allowing kids to communicate amongst one another, allowing them to collectively problem solve amongst one another. And I think that becomes more of a challenge in comprehensive distance learning. And if you go back to the PD on the patio archived webinars, there's some great ones in there about how we can be engaging students in these collectivist learning principles. So we'll address a bit of that too as we talk about Seesaw, because there's definitely ways you can utilize Seesaw to leverage that. The equity lens questions, I'm always coming back to these. I remember when these first came out, I thought, yeah, okay, that's good. I know that's important. But I think in these times, I try once a week actually to come back and revisit these and then reflect on some of the decisions I've been making throughout the week, both with my professional colleagues as well as with any kids that I might have been working with. So I like to float back to these equity lens questions as often as I can. All right, so we're going to jump now into a quick show and tell. I like to do something like this with my kids on Zoom often, I'm going to ask you in about 15 seconds, 30 seconds to, without getting up, I want you to look around your space. If you're cluttered like me, you got lots of choices, but I want you to pick something up, an artifact, to show us it says something about you. So you're gonna have to turn your camera on for just a moment if you're comfortable. If for whatever reason you're in a spot where you can't turn on your camera, don't worry about it. But I'm asking you to turn your camera on if you're comfortable with that. And hold up something like that's some examples here. A map if you love to travel. Maybe you've got a customized coffee cup. I've got a book there. I've got a bottle of wine. You know, if you've got a bottle of wine hidden in your bottom drawer, go ahead, pull it up. I see Kevin's got a guitar. I've got a soldering iron up on mine, but I'm going to hold up. What am I going to hold up? Let's hold up a Cliff Bar. I've been doing a ton of bicycle riding, and I've been eating a lot of Cliff Bars. I see, is that a seahorse, Stacy?
It's a zebra.
Oh, a zebra. Got it. Oh, there you go. I see it now. Yep. Oh my gosh, boots. Emily must be a hiker maybe, who loves to walk. Paul, who'd have known? Lacrosse stick. I don't believe it. Paul was my son's lacrosse coach back in the day.
Yep, great to see you, Eric.
Yep, back at you. Oh gosh, too many faces too. Oh, I'm seeing so many of my good friends. Right on. Oh, well, there's a few that we shouldn't be holding up, but that's, no, I'm kidding. All right. I encourage you to keep your camera on. If you want to shut it off, go ahead. That's fine. So why Seesaw Activities, right? Contribute if you're the least bit familiar with Seesaw Activities, go ahead and contribute your idea to the chat. You know, why should we be engaging our students with Seesaw Activities? I've got some ideas over there on the right. I think there's a lot of great reasons, but it helps me as I've used Seesaw Activities, and I'm sure many of you might have used them more than me, I'm not sure, but it helps me focus the kids on the task at hand. But for my record keeping purposes, even more importantly, it really helps me because when you create an activity, you get to see who's responded to it, who hasn't, and then you attach the skills to it in sort of a contained place for that one exercise. You can see the performance of every single student, which is a little bit harder to do if they're just creating their own and it's not attached to an activity. Perhaps the biggest reason is that there are so many activities already created for us to pull from, right? Because it's very simple, and we'll see how to do this if you don't know already. It's very simple to pull an activity that somebody else has created, whether they're in Beaverton or you know, Singapore, and make that activity your own, and then change it if you want. So there's all of these templates, if you will, that are out there for us to do. So I see some great John Plunkett. Creates a portfolio that can be very informative. And John, I'm here to tell you that you should be in my seat right now teaching this class as opposed to me. I'll put John on the spot. You don't have to unmute John, but John has been really a Seesaw. He's a quiet person, and so you might not have heard of him, but every time I walked into Mr. Plunkett's classroom, he just really leveraged Seesaw to the end, really, with his families and things. It's just amazing. So I'm glad to see you on here, John.
You're being too kind, but in truth, if it's possible to do with Seesaw, I've probably already done it.
Yep. So when I saw your name on the reg list, you made me nervous. I thought, oh man, we got somebody on here that knows 3 times as much as I do. Now, Amorose, I'm not sure about you. I don't know if you know anything or not, but we're going to continue anyways. You know, I know. If I make fun of you, you know I like you. All right. So a quick Zoom poll just on your screens, you know, if you got the reactions, you can do a thumbs up. But how many of you have done a Zoom poll with kids in Zoom before? Give me a thumbs up either through your reaction piece or visually on the screen. Give me a thumbs up. So it looks like not too many of us. I'm not going to show you how to create a Zoom poll, but if you just Google, you know, creating a Zoom poll, it's really easy. You're best off creating the Zoom poll before you start the Zoom conference. If you when you schedule a Zoom meeting, as opposed to just starting one on the fly, you have the option of creating a poll ahead of time. So you just type in the question, type in the selected answers, and then boom, I'm going to do this part right now where I'm going to start the poll. I'm launching it. And so you guys should see a poll on your screen right now. I'm asking you 3 questions to rate your comfortability with a tool called Mentimeter, which we might have time for at the end, Padlet, and also then Seesaw Activities. So if you want to answer those, I'll share the results with you here in a moment. So right now I'm seeing these results being updated in real time. So the first question, it looks like about 2/3 of us have maybe never heard of Mentimeter. Nobody's done anything with students yet with Mentimeter. That's good to know. I'm looking at Padlet. some more experience with Padlet, which I would expect that's been around for a long time. It used to be called Wall Wisher. And then I'm looking at Seesaw Activities. I might, if you're just taking your time and going slow with the poll, that's fine, but I might close the poll before you get a chance to finish it. Don't worry about it. Okay, it looks like about 2/3 of us have created their own Seesaw Activities for use with students. And 5% of you know more about Seesaw Activities than anyone, but you took this class because you like me so much. That's very good.
Can I ask you a question? So when you do the poll, can you see real time already the percentages for the
Yes.
students? So oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yes, and so I'm gonna end the poll and then share the results with you right now. But before I end it, I was seeing the numbers in the bar graph change as you guys were answering those, and so I'll click end poll and then share results. And so you should see now the results on your screen, so you can scroll through and see the results. Now you don't see it moving because the poll's been ended, right? But this is a great way for you to get information from your kids. And what I haven't done is created a poll on the fly, but I think somebody might know more than me, but you can edit polls. Yeah, I think you can actually create a poll on the fly. Relaunch, I can relaunch, poll closed. I can edit an existing poll. Maybe I can't do a poll from the get-go. I don't know. All right, anyways, off task here. All right. So I'm gonna switch over now into Seesaw. And start by showing you that if you, hopefully you guys are seeing my my screen right now. I just lost my Zoom window. Hold on. There we go. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my Seesaw library. Awesome. Right on. So the first thing the first thing I want to show you is the extensive libraries that are out there already. In the district library, I would assume that our district and school libraries are going to really explode in the next couple of weeks because folks will be creating a lot of activities. But notice at the top, and based on our poll, most of us know this probably, but there's community library, which is the outside world. We have our school and district library, which folks from inside Beaverton or inside your school have contributed. And then you have your library, which are the activities that you have either created yourself or that you've copied and made your own to utilize, okay? So I'm gonna go to the community library, and let's say I wanted to, I'm identified as a 4th grade teacher, but I could go to all if I want to, and I'm interested in, you know, a hands-on activity, maybe using fractions, and I know sometimes using Play-Doh with fractions is a lot of fun, so I did a search for Play-Doh fractions. I've already got this one in my library, but again, I'm just searching here in community. So if I click on the activity itself, I've got a couple of choices here that I can do now. If I click on the heart, it puts it into my library. That's a favorite now, and it's in mine. You can see it's already colored in, so it's already in my library. And then if I come down to the 3 dots at the end of it, now one of the things I like about this activity is it has the students actually make the Play-Doh first, and then it engages them in the process of actually using the Play-Doh to display their knowledge of fractions. But if I click on the 3 dots down here, I can share the activity. And if I want to, I can get the teacher link. And so I'm going to paste this into the chat. So if you wanted to share an activity with a teacher friend, I copied that link. I'm going to now go to the chat and paste it. And now if you click on that link, it'll open up in your Seesaw library, and boom, you'll be able to, as long as you're logged in your Seesaw account, and you can make that activity your own by clicking on that little heart button, and then right away assign it to your students, okay? Probably the better way to do that would be to add it to your library first, and then go to your library. You could share it from there as well, so here it is. So I could share it from here if I wanted to. And or once I assign it to my kids, now this is a new feature in Seesaw that many of you might be aware of already, but this is a brand new feature that was turned on about 3 weeks ago. It used to be in the old days that you could not provide students with a link to directly access the activity, let's say through a Google Doc or an outside delivery mechanism. But now when I click on assign, if I assign this to my class, I can now view it in my class because I've just assigned it to my class. And note now that, so here's the activity. It's in my class. I've assigned it to my class. And if I click on the 3 dots down here now, one of my choices is get student link. So this is huge because I now have the capability of linking directly to a Seesaw activity any place that I want to. You didn't used to have that capability, right? Oftentimes you don't need that because the students are actually, hold on a second, didn't mean to do that. The students are actually doing it right within their, right within Seesaw, right? Because they would see that add response piece. And I love the fact in Seesaw how for, as the teacher, you can click on add response and it will allow you to engage in the activity that you just created as your sample student. So you don't have to create those fake students. That one's been there for quite a while. I wanted to give you guys about, 3 or 4 minutes to do
Eric?
that yourself.
Sorry, time out. We had a great question before we move on.
Sure,
Can you
go ahead.
show how to put these activities into folders for students?
So into what I am, and John, I might lean on you here, what I am familiar with is that if you go, so once the student clicks on the activity and then they're done with the activity and they need to put it into a folder, is that what we're talking about?
I would suggest when you're crafting the activity, so like in my case, I generally always make them myself. You've already pre-selected or made in your collections what your folders are. Then since all of mine are also all graded, I go through and assign what skills match the task. And then I also just assign it to that folder. So then everything is organized. So it's more accessible when you look at it on the skills page. And then I always have a portfolio on my iPad anywhere I go of all of their work.
So are you talking about the collections here, John, when you put your activities in collections?
But
yeah,
there's an option where you can add the folders. So I don't know if the question is, how do you make the folders or how do you put them in a folder? When you have the folders made, if you're just making an activity or grading an activity, or the student just randomly sends something in, like a great science project, let's say they build a flamethrower, then all you would do is you'd go, well, that's clearly STEM and awesome. So I'm gonna tag that or pick the folder for science, which you could do anytime if you'd made a science folder beforehand.
Right.
But you want to go through and figure out what your folders are going to be. It's much easier because then every time you build a task, you just assign it to that, or just add the folder when you're creating it or before you post it. Otherwise, if you had 30 students, you would have to do it every single time.
Right.
Versus I'll do it once and it's already going to be tagged with that folder.
And so you guys, I know that was a lot to digest, even for myself, because my knowledge base of this is not as strong as John's. But what I can, again, what I referred to earlier, Seesaw has a great help section. So if you, and I've linked to some of those in the on the last slide of the slide deck, or you can go, right to YouTube. There are teachers with YouTube channels that have put together very detailed tutorials on how to accomplish all of these things. And so just know that it's been done for you. It's just a matter of going out there and, and finding that resource to show us how to do it. If you got any very specific questions, I'd encourage you to shoot me an email. And then I know a lot of folks that know more than I do. And if I can't answer your question, I'll be able to find out for you. So great question though, because I know especially on the get-go, it's important to make sure you've got those pieces organized before you get going. So I wanted to, for those of us who have maybe not created activities themselves, I wanted to model really quickly creating an activity from scratch. So I'm going to go to activities, browse the activity library, and go to my library. You've always got to be in your library to create an activity. And click on create new activity. And so we're going to do an activity. I'm going to do some fluency practice with my kids. So I'm going to call it, let's practice, maybe this is a 2nd or 3rd grade piece. Let's practice reading. And for the instructions, I actually have some instructions copied already. And I just wanted to briefly reference these and sort of what they look like, right? Because the instructions, as those of you who are familiar with the activities, you know that this is something that the students can refer back to not only at the beginning of doing the activity, but anytime during the activity, they can click and pop these instructions up. Now I keep on waiting for Seesaw to give us the capability of putting in the little icons, and they haven't done that yet. And so when you type out your instructions, you have to utilize these secret codes, right? The text shortcuts. So if I want to have the photo icon in my directions, I need to use a colon, the word photo, and another colon with no spaces. So this is sort of their secret, and this is linked to straight from their website. I think I've got a link to it from our slide deck as well. So I've got those typed out already. There we go. For our ELL students and for students who aren't as, you know, maybe you've got some non-readers that aren't going to be able to read these directions, I could add voice instructions. So I'll just record just the first line here. Number one, you guys, you want to start by tapping the add button, and then you can take a photo of your book cover or the page you will read. You can actually use the draw environment or go straight to the photo for this. So I'll pause that. So now I've got some voice instructions added to my piece. You can add a template for student responses. I'm not going to do that for this one, but John mentioned the skills. This is a very handy piece here. So for the skills, these are Beaverton learning targets. And so since this is reading fluency, if I type in fluency, yep, I can see here there's a 4th grade fluency target that I can tag this activity with that later I can go back and score with. So I'll go here. So I've tagged that with the skill. And here for the teacher notes are important. This is not visible for the students, but the teacher notes are important for if you are creating something that you know is going to go out there to the wider community. It's an opportunity for you to be specific in maybe how you're planning on using the activity. So this is sort of the metadata behind the activity that you're creating. So I'll click on save. And now we can see that indeed I've got the activity here, and we can see that it put in the icons, and I can play the instructions for the students, or the students can play the instructions themselves. Number one, you guys, you want to start by adding. So I stopped that right away. And now I just need to assign it to my students. So I can click on assign and assign it to my class, and then view the activity. And again, I can, from here, I can engage myself in the activity, right? And as a sample student. But then here's one of the things that I love about the activities is that once students start responding, and many of you probably know this, but once the students start responding, when I click here, it gives me a list of every single student that's been assigned that activity and whether or not they've completed it or not. And if they have completed it, I can click on it, preview it, and then score it based on the skill. By default, and John, you can help me out here, but or anybody, by default, it's a 4-point rubric, but I think you can go up to 6 in your settings. Click on the little gear icon or the little wrench icon.
You can edit it, and you can also personalize the colors if you don't like the default. It tended to work pretty well when we had the 4-point scale when we used to use those.
And the colors are nice in that because when you pull one up, if you've got several skills, you can look at it across a student as well, or across an activity, just visually really quick. So like a 1 could be like a red, and the kids don't see these colors, but a number 2 could be maybe a light green, and number 3 could be a darker green, and number 4 could be a real bright green. And so just visually right away, you could see where students are performing and know which kids you're going to need to follow up with right away. So those activities are I rarely create an activity without tagging it with a skill because it just gives you that ability to come back and look at your kids' work with with a deeper light. So let's close that. Yeah.
Would you mind just repeating where you got those little cheat codes for the icons?
Yes, actually, if you go to, actually, the quickest way that I've got them is I just go to Google and type in Seesaw icon shortcuts, and it links you right to this document. Awesome. This document's also linked to from the Seesaw website, but you got to dig a little bit to get to it. So just Google Seesaw icon shortcuts, and I think your first hit or your first 2 or 3 hits will be the official Seesaw page that you're looking at right here now.
Great. And do you for the skills section, can parents and kids see the grades for those skills on their end?
John, I'm going to defer you to that. I don't believe so. I know for sure the students can't, but whether or not you can elect to share just a single students with their family, I don't think so.
Sorry, I was on the wrong screen. They do not have access to it. What I sometimes do to share it, especially since it's such a powerful visual tool, is I'll just do a screenshot of the relevant area, since the skills are also sorted by the amount of that particular skill. So if there was 8 assignments that had that, you can pull those up. But unless you share it as a screenshot, the only person who can see it is you.
Which makes sense. There's another kind of activity that I haven't had too much experience, a little bit, not too much experience creating. And that is what I would call a draggable activity. And so I'm back in the activity library here. I'm going to go to community, and I'm thinking about activities where students are actively engaged with dragging and dropping things, right? I used to make those kinds of templates way back in the day with kid pics. But so I'm just going to search for drag and drop in the activity library, and then take a sort of a look here at some of the things that I'm looking at. I see a dragging and dropping in the label tool, factor opinion, earthquakes. So these are activities that folks have created where using either graphics or labels, you can drag and drop. And so I want to do, I'm going to look for something, maybe I'm going to go drag and drop base 10. I haven't searched for this before. We're going to see if there's anything here for drag and drop base 10 activities. That's what you get for doing it live. Well, here's one. Now I have no idea what this, if this activity is any good, but let's take a look at it. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to my library. Go back to my class. Go to my activities. Oops, what am I doing here? I just add that. I've got a real pause going on here. I did assign it there, didn't I? No, there we go. Okay, assign it to my class. View it in the class. There it is. So I'll be the sample student. And so now I've got the ability to actually drag and drop these pieces here. I believe if I get the select tool, I can then I could write a number over here using so I could say, 342. And so I'm going to get rid of this guy. And so 1, 2, 3. So you get the idea, right? So the key to creating this type of activity is in Seesaw, you can lock certain pieces. So right now, if I look around, I can't move a lot of these other pieces because they're locked inside of Seesaw. So I would suggest starting with these by doing what I did, search for one, get one you like, look at what you've got, and then deconstructing it, right? And I've got that turned over here. So the idea here, right, is that you're either using a background graphic or you have created pieces using the draw tools in Seesaw and then locking them down and then putting the elements in that you want to be movable, right? There's some great YouTube tutorials out there on creating drag and drop Seesaw activities. And I don't know if anybody's had experience with that. You could sort of drop something in the chat. I see Julia Bartow. Question about drag and drop activities. Is there a way to have multiple of the same object without having just to copy and paste on top of each other? I don't think so. If somebody knows different, unmute, but I think you've just got to put as many of those there as you think the students are going to need to be dragging up. So those drag and drop activities, I think there's a lot of existing ones out there that you might find useful. I think about the primary implications of that, right? With CVC words, matching upper and lowercase letters. So I think the sky's the limit really when you start talking about those drag and drop activities. Again, going into the to the community library and doing a search for those first before you start creating them by scratch on your own, right? So I don't know if anybody else has had any experience with those drag and drop activities, but they're really engaging for kids. You want to make sure you don't overuse them, but they're very engaging for kids. Kids love to do those.
Eric, Chris wants to know if you edit a community resource, can you post the revision back into the community library?
Yes. Yep. And I do believe so. John, you might know this better than me, but when you post something to the community library, to the community resource, I think it's vetted, so it takes a bit for it to actually show up in the Seesaw Community Library. I believe it's been a long time since I posted anything to the community library in Seesaw.
I believe so. It's been a long time since I uploaded something myself, but I'm pretty sure that sounds right.
Yeah, they vet them before they take them. So, and I will say that when Seesaw first began their library piece, there wasn't much there, and the way that it was organized, it wasn't really even searchable. But if it's been a while since you've been in the activity libraries, they vastly improved both the breadth of everything that's available, because so many people are using Seesaw. And I think we're going to see those libraries really explode even more now since since the situation that we're in. So if you haven't been in the libraries for a while, I'd encourage you to jump back in and check those out, because there's a lot of really good stuff.
There's one more question. Andrew wants to know, is there a way to better manage student work completion of activities? There's a problem last year was if a student had turned in an assignment, he wasn't aware that they had turned it in.
And see, this also was difficult to keep track of whether or not students made changes to work that was suggested. Again, John, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to defer to you, but what I do know about that is that you can set a due date, and so students, I believe, can't do anything in the activity after that. I know you can schedule an activity for when they'll see it. So you can create activities beforehand and then schedule it so that they won't see it until when you say. But John, I'm going to throw that one at you.
It's a little bit, I would say a little bit tedious, but if you do it often enough, you get fast enough, it's really no longer an issue, which is my personal way of doing it is I require every single thing to be approved by me. So they can work on it in draft mode all they want, make changes, spend 3 or 4 days on it, but it doesn't actually post until I have officially posted it. So they're not able to post it without me knowing it, because I'm the one who saw it.
So you're aware of it because it comes up as that red bar across the bottom that it's awaiting approval. Yeah. And then won't the calendar, Tanya says, won't the calendar help with keeping track too? Because you would be able to see what's been, how many items have been turned in, and then clicking on the calendar to see exactly what was there. Okay, guys, we're getting close to time here. I did want to show you one other quick tool. Now, again, there's a lot of questions still coming in. I want to encourage you guys. I'm going to save this chat, and any questions that weren't answered, I'll get back to you and make sure that I either answer your question or put you in touch with somebody who can answer your question. But what I'd like to do at this point is switch back to my slide deck and engage you guys in a, so this is the third to last slide in the deck here that talks about the resources. And so I think 4 of these resources are actually linked to from the website. But there's one of these resources here that it's an amazing resource that's been curated by one of my fellow toasts, Carrie Kunert. This is an amazing resource that she's put together, and it's evolved over quite a bit of time, but she's now got it sort of, specific for comprehensive distance learning. So you have this, if you just go to the slide deck, the bit.ly that I gave you, and I'll put it up at the very end. And right here, if you just click on this link, it takes you to the slide deck. And I will just say this slide deck has got everything you'll ever need to know about Seesaw and more. She has linked to some resources out there. Many of them are resources that are on Seesaw's website. Many of them are resources that teachers have created. So for example, activity libraries, how to schedule activities, how to create activities, Seesaw Home Activities Map, how to create templates for activities. I just briefly mentioned templates for activities, didn't go into how to do them, but if I click here, it takes me right to slide 47. There's like 70 something slides in this deck, I think. So again, this is a resource I think you'd be remiss not to check out, because Carrie's put a lot of work into this, and it's an amazing resource. So check that one out. And then lastly, I noticed when I polled you guys, not too many of us had experience with Mentimeter, and I'm going to go ahead and post this link in the chat as well. But if you go to www.menti.com and or to the link I'm about to put into the chat, so let me get this posted into the chat here. There we go. If you click on the link in the chat, you won't have to use the code, but if you go to menti.com, the code there, 5436 534, you can either put spaces or not, it doesn't matter. But Mentimeter is a tool that, it's an online tool that allows you to present information in a series of slides, similar to Google Slides, but it has additional interactive elements that you can choose for a slide. So for example, where you're going right now, and if I'm going to take this off the screen right here right now and actually go to Mentimeter. So if you need, don't worry about the code now, you can just click on the link in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and go to that Mentimeter, and we can see live here, as you guys are typing in those words, this word cloud updates live. Right? So as you guys put them in, now the larger words are words that are being used more often. The smaller words are words that are being used less often. You have the ability to allow kids to type in more than one word, allow the ability for kids to submit more than once. So if you limit it to one word, they can do repeated times. And then think about the discussions you can have after generating a crowdsourced word cloud like this, right? So let's say we've all read a passage together, we've had a great classroom discussion, and then you encourage students to, pick that one word or that one phrase, and then this generates a nice word cloud visual that you can utilize then to just simply engage your students in further conversation. So if you go to mentimeter.com, it tells you how to do it. Very simple. The base version, that's all I've been using for about 1.5 years, is free. And the limitation is, I think, the number of slides that you put in your presentation, but oftentimes my slides are just a single page, and they work just fine. So, and in Mentimeter, this is just one visual element. You can have free response, you can have multiple choice, I think scaling, you can do all kinds of stuff in Mentimeter. So, going back to those 5 buckets in the engagement bucket, I think this is an opportunity for us to allow our kids to respond and to engage really in that distance learning environment. So this Mentimeter tool is very cool. What you're seeing on my screen right now is sort of this is my teacher version of it, and it's tracking similar to a Google form. It's tracking what you're putting in and then actively updating it. So it's a tool that I use quite often with teachers and kids. And I think it's where Padlet was maybe, 10 years ago, was Wallwisher. A lot of people are discovering it. And I wanted to close with, there's an eval. So make sure you hit that eval. We do read those and pay attention to them and craft future PD on it. If you're interested in getting PDUs for this, if you click, these are all hot. They're also linked as text pieces in the notes in this slide deck. But if you click on the PDU, it'll take you right to Teacher Source, where you can do that click with your teacher ID number, staff ID number, and you'll get the PDUs. And then this will be posted as an anytime Teacher Source course, probably by Monday. So you could come back and take a look at that. And I'm going to swing back to that first slide in case anybody needs this URL. And I'm going to pause it there. And Mindy, I don't know if you've still been paying attention to the chat, if there's anything else in there that we need to address right away. But I can stick on for a while. Thanks for coming today, you guys, and just take a deep breath and relax, right? I'm sort of done for the day. I've got just a casual Zoom meeting in about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to go out for a bike ride and try and collect my thoughts and relax for the day. I know this is a stressful time for everybody. It's great to see some familiar faces, and hope you got something out of it. And now, if you really have a question, you might want to email John rather than me, right? But no, don't do that. Don't email me, and then I'll push them out. Okay. I've lost my chat. There we go.
There's just lots of love for you in there, Eric.
Right on. Thank you.